Hi, hello all. Thank you so much for joining us here at USA Today. I'm Caitlin Petrakovitz, and I'm so excited to be talking with Felecia Wellington Radel, our senior reporter for tech and culture. Welcome, Felecia. I know you've been covering Apple's Let Loose iPad event all morning, so let's dive in. Let's cover all the good stuff that we saw today. For those of you joining on our social platforms, please, by all means, leave your questions, comments, smart remarks, and thoughts. And we'll take as many as we can, as many as we have time for. So in his introduction today, CEO Tim Cook called it the biggest day for iPads since its introduction. And so, Felecia, what did we learn today?
I'm getting a bit of an echo, so hopefully you can hear me. But they told us that today is the biggest day for iPads, and so that's essentially what we all got ready for. They had all the creative intro, and then they introduced everything else.
We had 5 new iPads introduced. Is that correct? Let's kind of run through what we got today. We got 2 new iPad Airs, essentially, correct? We got an 11-inch and a 13-inch. What kind of additions, what kind of new things did we see there on the Airs? Can you hear me? Can you tell us a little bit more about what we got from those Airs? What updates there were to the Air?
So the Air was especially interesting. They added. I'm so sorry about the echo throwing me off. So hopefully we're good. But yeah, we got the Air updates, which were really interesting. They introduced a new, larger display for the Air. So they have the 11-inch, and now there's a 13-inch. And then they jumped it all the way up to an M2 chip, which is pretty great. Puts it on par with some of the MacBooks that they have. So it should make it pretty powerful for an Air. There's going to be a blue and purple model. I know, small beans, colors, but I actually think it's pretty cool when they allow people to really express themselves via color in the finishes. And it will work with the new Apple Pencil Pro. So, spoiler alert, that was an accessory that was talked about.
Yeah, let's jump to that instead first before we hit the Pro, because I think that the Pencil has some great updates, which, I mean, literally one of the smallest Apple products that exist, but one of those things that I think professionals and, everyday users like myself get really excited about all the time. What did they tell us about the Pencil?
So it's going to be the new Apple Pencil Pro. It'll start at $129 in this economy, but that's really on par with the other Apple Pencils. And what I really liked about it is, okay, the tech stuff is that it's going to have like a gyroscope in it, and it's going to allow for like this kind of pressurized use of the pencil, and all of that is super cool. But can I just be honest? My favorite part is that you'll be able to use the Find My with your Apple Pencil. My Apple Pencil is usually magnetically attached to my iPad, and I keep a very close eye on that expensive little thing. But the fact that you can now take advantage of Find My to make sure that you can locate it if it should happen to fall off or anything like that, I think is a pretty great update.
I 100% agree. I have mine attached here to my Mini, but that's not always the case. As I think consumers, we've all been asking for Find My in there for a very long time. So that'll be great. I think that the introduction that Apple talked about of their Pencil Pro will now have Squeeze. that sounded really interesting, simply because if you are using it for creative endeavors or even just taking notes. Admittedly, I'm not an artist. I take a ton of notes though by longhand, and it's nice to do those digitally. And so having the ability to um, shift that, change that in the moment, I think can be really beneficial. So it's exciting. After the air, we heard a little bit more about the iPad Pro. And this is their beast, right? This is the top of the line, the one they want us to, everybody to focus on. So, can you tell us a little bit more about what we got out of that iPad Pro announcement today?
Oh, absolutely. It was 100%. They were like, yeah, Air, some other stuff. The Pro. Everybody stop. New music, new ad. So yeah, I mean, I think kind of like with the Apple Pencil, I imagine a lot of user feedback went into this. So not only did they add another announcement, the M4 chip. Guys, they're up to M4. This is not a drill, but they introduced this M4 chip. I think OLED had been talked about. There's a 2 OLED display. It has the 2 OLED panels. They're calling it OLED tandem or tandem OLED. So that's a big part of it. It's much thinner. It's a much thinner thing. I believe the specs are it's about a quarter pound lighter. There's an 11-inch and a 13-inch. So the 11-inch model is like 5.3 millimeters thick and weighs less than a pound. Pretty impressive. But I think what happens here is over the years, the iPad Pro has been one of the more popular models, in particular with creators. The original iPad Pro was one of the only ones that supported Apple Pencil. So you had a lot of artists being drawn to it. You were able to run some of those early video editing, like ports to iPad on the iPad Pro. And again, I think they just really listened to those creative consumers because there is so much that went into, I think, taking that into consideration, which also includes some updates to Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro. But I think all of it started here with the iPad Pro. So again, the super, super, super powerful chip. They did this for both of them, but they moved the front camera location when you're in landscape mode. Again, small thing, one of my favorites. I'm sure that, again, it was a response to user feedback, but I think that they were really looking at how people are actually using it. It's not just, I mean, yes, some of us just watch YouTube on it. I'm not going to name names, but also a lot of people do take it. They use it as a display while maybe filming video, while creating, while on the move and making art or digital art or motion graphics. And I think everything that they changed here speaks to that.
Yeah, I mean, Apple for a long time has touted this as their MacBook replacement, right? And if you want people to use it like a computer and be attached to that keyboard, you should probably have the camera in a little bit more of an organic spot. So that was a great call. I think as well, hand in hand with a lot of their software updates today, I thought it was interesting. We did get some of those updates ahead of its developers conference next month. So we heard about Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro updates, which play exactly into what you described about this being really for somebody who's on the go, making art, editing. Final Cut Pro also gets multi-cam support, which is really interesting for people who are using this as a heavy duty in the field filming tool. So that's really interesting to me. I think the saddest, going back to what you said about colors, we are still on the Pro line relegated to just 2 colors. Yes. Like, come on, Apple. Even the professionals want to have fun. We would love something jazz here.
I choked on my coffee at Space Black. I was like, it's black, but okay.
I know. Always with silver and space black. Give me something. Even on the iPhones, we get a navy or something or a deep green. Let's go with something like that. Speaking of iPhones, things we didn't hear about today, things that maybe were rumored that we might not have heard about. Our last spring event from Apple, or let's say spring, they introduced the iPhone SE. That was a couple years ago at this point. We heard nothing about that today. Was there anything else surprising from you that we did not or that we might have missed today?
To be honest, this was right along with what I expected. Not that I'm clairvoyant. I mean, the promo had an Apple Pencil in it, right? I think that they went a little further than I anticipated. I mean, you mentioned how normally we would get more of the software information in WWDC, which is about a month away. And so that's usually where we hear everything about how they've updated their software, their iOS, and those sort of features. And iPhone, we usually hear about in the fall. So I was a little surprised, even though I think I understand why. I can imagine that, again, as they lean on creators really look into these devices, they were like, we also have a little something else for you. In addition, for the Final Cut Pro update, you mentioned the multicam. There's going to be a whole app that's just for iPhone and iPad. So I think they didn't want to sit on that. I'm still surprised, but they announced that now. And I imagine that'll be something that's really encouraging to people who are interested in what they heard today.
I mean, I was interested, but I think on Instagram, we had a question from @Cena Constantine that I think really resonates with a lot of us. They're curious if this new generation of updates is really worth the upgrade, or should maybe a user look at the older generation for cheaper, less expensive, maybe a generation behind in terms of the chips, but maybe more worth it, let's say, versus the expensive up-to-date M4 chip. I think this is a really difficult question. I don't know if you have an opinion here or what you would do as a user.
I have feedback if someone were to ask me, but I think ultimately it's hard to answer because everyone, I think, approaches an iPad in particular with different use cases. I think the same thing about the Apple Watch, actually, too. Some people are like, "That's ridiculous. Who am I, Dick Tracy?" And they have a point. But I also wear mine every day, and I get a lot of use out of it because I knew what I wanted out of it, and I get exactly that. So it was worth every penny to me. And so I think it also makes sense here. Ultimately, yes, both of these devices, the new Pro and the new Air, are extremely powerful. And if you've been looking for those missing elements, for it to work faster, to have a better pencil for your art, we didn't even get into the new Magic keyboards, which I think is probably one of the more enticing parts of all of this. But honestly, under the hood, if you are looking to portable entertainment, maybe watch some movies on the go, occasionally draw on Procreate, or even animate in Procreate Dreams, say, which I really do think that the iPad Air 5, I don't even know if they're calling the new one 6, they didn't say, but the 5 that came out 2022, pretty powerful machine. It can do all of those things and works with Apple Pencil too, which is, much improved upgrade over the original Apple Pencil. And so if that checks all the boxes, why spend more? Sorry, Apple. Sorry, everyone. It's all shiny and new, but if it checks what you need, I think that's fine. Unlike some of the iPhones, more of the iPads tend to be well supported for a little bit longer, and I think that makes sense. I also think that Apple isn't blind to that. One of the other announcements, kind of tacked on at the end, right behind all of the amazing confetti, is that they dropped the price on the iPad 10-inch. And I have to double check. They didn't say it out loud, but I'm wondering if the price also dropped on like the iPad mini and some of the other. It did not. Okay. But
No, no.
it had previously. So that's why I was like, did they adjust those two? So there has been a kind of adjustment to at least the iPad 10-inch. And again, I still think that a couple of the ones that are already available and still pretty recent are perfectly viable tablets for people who may just want some of these things and don't necessarily need all of those new functions. But that's, again, depends on what you want.
I was just going to say the same thing. Like everything Apple introduces, it's shiny, it's lovely, it will be a workhorse for you. However, if it is not what you are doing with it, if you're not going to be using 2 terabytes of space on the new iPad Pro to do multi-camera filming, directing, Procreate designs, running a second display, any of that, then yeah, I don't know that spending $12.99 on a 13-inch iPad Pro is necessary. I think that we are in a time period here for about a month where the iPad has a better chip than our MacBooks. The M4 chip that they introduced today really touted a lot of its new abilities, will most likely come to the computers at WWDC in a month. I think we can safely gamble on that one. But if top of line is not the most important to you, the older ones are pretty good. I too found it interesting that there was no price drop on the mini. I think part of that is simply because of the chip that's in there is technically a generation ahead of the chip that's in the low end iPad. So I think that's their justification there,
That's a good
which is
point. That's a good point.
sad because I love my mini. I love the size. As somebody who uses it to read and take notes, it's perfect. I don't want something larger than a notebook. And I hope this doesn't a portent of things to come for my mini. I love her. I want her to stick around.
Oh, no, the mini is wonderful. I actually have an Air myself. I have the Air 5, but I think the mini was always a great introduction. And I also feel like there's been a great moving away from thinking of iPads as like just a bigger display for your iPhone. They are completely separate. As a matter of fact, I like to put my iPhone away, like just my phone away as a phone, and just use my iPad for some of the other things, taking care of some things, writing some notes, doing some reading, doing some art, etc., and just kind of detaching from my phone. And I don't know, I just something that you said about, some of these older entries. Yeah, I think just in this economy, we have to be super conscious about what we're purchasing or what we're using things for. Listen, purple, is it a part of my personality? Maybe. And so that sounds beautiful. I love the way that they do the colors, but you can buy a purple case too and get that. I recently, a couple of months ago, wrote a story about the MacBook Air with the M3 chip. And I have to say, the M chips are just extremely powerful. I know sometimes people are like, this is amazing. And what else are they supposed to say about something they designed? But it is really quite powerful. And so even though it's amazing that they're now going to have the Pro all the way up to this new M4, which is more powerful than some of their laptops, the fact remains that when we took a look at that MacBook Air with the M3 chip, it was doing better than some of the older MacBook Pros. And so I think that if you're going to look at an iPad with even an older one of the M chips, I think you're going to be fine in terms of performance. And then you can see how everything else falls for what it offers.
I think that one of the biggest questions that I have, and a reminder, if you're joining us on social, please leave your questions, comments, smart remarks so that we can tackle some of those for you. But biggest question top of mind for me today is, are we really getting finally closer to that moment where an iPad could truly replace a computer for the majority of people? Are we finally going to see that now? I mean, price-wise, like you mentioned, we're basically there. I would say the iPad Pro 11-inch starts at $999, and that's the entry point of a MacBook Air 13-inch. It has a stronger chip for the moment, like we mentioned, but as you said, the M3 is really powerful. So right now at this point in time, it's maybe a little bit more powerful if you're doing that visual work, but will it remain that way? The 13-inch Pro iPad also starts at the same price as a MacBook Air 15-inch. So again, we're seeing those inch up, be closer, but is the reality there for most people? Will we be able to see that in the coming years? We mentioned the new Magic Keyboard, paired with an Apple Pencil. Like, do you see that really making a difference? Do you see that being this being the turning point for people?
I like to think that it might be. Wouldn't that be fun? This nice, light, new thing. You just carry that one machine. But unfortunately, I think the reality is we may not be there yet. And it's not really, I don't think it's something that Apple will be able to solve on its own. It's not that they haven't, I think, provided some of the environment on the iPad to do that. I mean, the Magic Keyboard, I know it's a very popular accessory for people's iPads. They like how portable all of that is, and they can leave maybe their laptop at home. But I don't know what your experience has been like, but mine is that while I can do short things like maybe do some writing, do some art, maybe even do some light audio or video editing on my iPad, and I quite enjoy it, the internet and many apps are actually not set up in a way that really reflects tablets. They say that there are tablet views. You can opt in for full views, but many websites, many apps, the most like powerful version of apps, looking at you, Adobe, just are not going to be at their full scale at on the iPad, no matter how powerful it is. They are still firmly ensconced in our laptops. And so it may be that for work, we will always require laptops. But I also think that if a lot of the work you're doing is creative or for you or for some other outlet and not through like a business provided laptop, you will require a separate device. And that has to be taken into a consideration on what your budget allows or what you think will be worth. Because if you have a full, powerful laptop or desktop computer, well, then what are you getting the iPad for? What will it provide? I still, again, I have one, and it's been an amazing addition to how I use my own digital devices. But that's just a reality. I don't know that we're in a place where we can throw our laptops in the garbage, despite how much we might want to sometimes.
I absolutely want to sometimes. As a reminder for those joining us, we're talking about Apple's Let Loose iPad event from this morning. Felecia, who's our senior reporter on tech and culture, has been covering that all day for us today. I'm sure that will continue for you with Apple's WWDC, their developers conference, coming in about a month. This morning, as we've recapped, multiple iPads, new accessories, all kinds of fun things. But that doesn't mean everyone was satisfied, right? So, any big surprises or any disappointments for you today?
For me, no. I don't know if anyone chimed in. I know we had a poll where people told us what they were hoping would happen or what they wish Apple would bring back. I don't know if we want to share that just yet.
Absolutely.
Again, oh, sorry. Again, for me, I expected this. There was a couple of new things. Um, I will say that these devices have been deeply revamped, and that's really interesting to see, but they're also all the same devices. The only new thing that we got, in my opinion, was the Apple Pencil Pro, and two other ones do exist. But again, I know a lot of people trying to, and also, complete side note, a little unrelated. I am interested to hear from people who have kind of done away with using a laptop or desktop, and they've kind of the majority of their use is on an iPad. I would be really interested in hearing that. But anyway, back to the poll.
No, I think that's a good point. I wonder if there are people who have been able to do that successfully and what field they work in or what, they use it for day to day. That would be fascinating for sure. Certainly. We did. As Felecia mentioned, we polled those of you on social media to see what Apple product you would want to see get an upgrade. We kind of, it was really foretold that this was going to be an iPad event today. And so we said, what other types of things? It was close on Threads. I guess 33% said Apple Watches. That's intriguing. I am still wearing, I think, 2 or 3 generations ago. Like Felecia mentioned, I love my Apple Watch. It does exactly what I need from it, and that's good enough. I don't know that I would expect anything new there, but I'll be interested in keeping an eye on that for some updates in the future. But on X, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, overwhelmingly, people were really, really looking for iPhone updates, which I think is interesting. We kind of touched on that at the top of our conversation. The iPhone SE was released about 2 years ago. So it is, something people associate possibly with spring or pre WWDC. I think that iPhone update will likely come next month. I think I really see Apple leaning on those software updates next month, which generally give us more information about what's going to come in the new iPhones, even if we are picking through that beta to try and find out clues about what the new designs and things will look like. I don't think there were any mentions of new products or new things. People did, some people were like, oh, I'd love a Vision Pro update. But I think we're a little too new for updates there or changes to that structure right now. It seems we do have some comments from people who wanted to share with us their computer and iPad experience. Comment from Positive Vibes on TikTok. I always need a computer because iPad is just not able to do everything yet. It's exactly what we said, exactly what we agree with. And I think, like Felecia, you mentioned, that's going to be the biggest thing to hamper them will actually be the outside work. Not that Apple's iPads aren't powerful enough to do this or to be a replacement, but a lot of things on the web, a lot of apps just aren't built for it, unfortunately. We also have another comment from Dennis on TikTok, excuse me. And he wants to ask, why don't Apple phones have a radio? I mean, I've never needed that, but I do understand the sentiment. I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, and that is apps. That is Apple keeping an area for people to expand the use cases of a phone, allowing for people to use it how they want to by adding in extra apps or making changes there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect people to subscribe to the Apple/Macintosh, subscription plan and calendar. We follow it closely, and I understand. Usually, Apple traditionally will have an iPhone event in around September, October, and that's why I wasn't really anticipating any information. I think we'll get a lot of software information next month. There could be a lot of big changes for them. It would be interesting if they could completely revamp the iPhone. I know that everything is like it's bigger and better, and it's like it's essentially the same except for the camera. Even though I do quite love the iPhone and it has come a long way, but it would be interesting to see if they could completely revamp it or change some of the functionality of it, especially as we, I think, navigate more privacy questions. I know that they've addressed some of that in the most recent update, but I would like to see some more. So hopefully we'll hear some of that next month. And then again, they usually have their big iPhone event in the fall. But though they could surprise us, they could do whatever they want. I don't work there, but we'll see.
I'm great segue for me to ask, what are your predictions for the developers conference next month?
Ooh, I don't know if it's so much as a prediction, but everyone is talking about their use of AI. We saw a little bit of that today. I don't know what to predict there, but I know that they've been slowly approaching that conversation in terms of apps or partners they work with. So we might hear more of that. And then again, I think that we might hear some changes. It was a UA change or EU EU change to how the Apple Store functions abroad, and I'm wondering if they may make some changes here in the United States. And if they do, those might be something that figure into WWDC. They might just talk about any way that they're opening up accessibility, and then just being of. I know accessibility in general is really important to Apple. They have an entire division, and they've been talking quite a bit. They've been sending out information about how they've been updating things for people who maybe are hard of hearing or have low vision. And so I wonder if that will become a bigger part of not only how the devices operate, but just some of the considerations for the software or, any of their partners. So I wonder if that'll be kind of a standalone part of the conference, which would be great. I'd actually, when I saw the Apple Pencil Pro, I was like, that's cool, but what does that mean for people with mobility issues? And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about what this means in terms of all their accessibility work.
I think it's a great call out. I found it interesting that we had numerous mentions of AI today, but very few were about Apple's development in that area, which leads me to believe, like you said, they'll save that for their own big event next month. Most of those call outs were tied to apps or things that others are creating or evolving there. They talked a lot about their M4 chip and the way in which it allows for more robust AI and machine learning capabilities, which will be, I think, important for us to remember when they add those inevitably to their line of laptops and desktops next month, or in the coming months at the very least. Their Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro that got updates today as well did touch a bit on machine learning and AI creation and generation. So Apple is slowly dipping its toe into that pond. It was interesting to me that there was no mention of Siri. A couple of our social responders also said, we want to hear more about Siri. We want to know why this hasn't been updated in so long. And hopefully we'll hear more about her, him, them, it. I don't know what to call assistants. Hopefully we'll hear more about Apple's assistant, Siri, at WWDC next month. I think that would be great. Felecia, thank you so very much for joining today, for sharing with us all of your knowledge. As a final question, what excites you about the world of tech that you're covering here at USA Today?
Wow, ouch. That hurts. Oh, what does excite me? I'm gonna have to go back to the accessibility. I think more and more people are able to use tech devices, and it adds to their world and their ability and their access, and that really brings me much joy. I went to an event a couple of months ago where there was a woman who she is non-speaking, but she has the ability, but she is non-speaking, and she uses a tablet to communicate with everyone. I mean, she's a PhD. She's a brilliant person who just, is not speaking, but now is able to is able to communicate more easily in a way that suits her. And I think that is phenomenal. And I know there are more stories like that. I think there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of accountability to be had. But I am glad that that has been a forefront of tech discussions. And also it's happening in video games as well. I know that we're talking Apple and like phones and mobile devices, but in video games too. And that really brings me a lot of joy.
I love that. I love seeing the accessible controllers that are consistently evolved from Microsoft and Sony, especially with PlayStation and the Xbox. I think there's a lot of room there for people to join a culture, a community, a conversation that they may not have been able to in the past. That is
diversity only improve it.
Yeah,
diversity will only improve it. So
thank you so much. I hope at WWDC we have more exciting things to talk about. I know.
Oh yeah, we have to do all of this again. So I hope there's plenty for us to discuss. I'm looking forward to it. Get your coffee ready, get your snacks. We're doing all of this again.
Yep. Longer event. Expect that one to probably be at least an hour, potentially closer to 2 for that keynote.
Yeah.
Usually the norm. But it also means we're going to get a lot of info about new iOS, probably new iPad OS, definitely a new Mac OS, just entirely new operating systems across the board, which, as we said before, will lead us to wild speculation about new products, hopefully. So I think that'll be a good event as well for things to be a little more exciting, to be a little more what's new, what's flashy, what can we really get our hands on soon. So thank you again, Felecia. This has been lovely chatting with you. Thank you for recapping this for everyone. And for those on other platforms, thank you for joining us at USA Today. I hope you have a lovely afternoon.